the thing is, like, when you get child actors in, generally speaking, I know she's not a child, don't mistake me on this, but, like, child actors, generally speaking, are awful. You can't trust them. But I honestly
can't trust them. They're not a bunch of like swindlers.
having listened to some of
they're not loan sharks. can't trust them. Child actors.
Having listened to some of the performances from child actors of this, I will say that I did feel swindled listening to them. So there's that.
Warui Deshou.
Easy breezy. Ladies, gentlemen, and MBs, welcome to 2020. Welcome to Warui Deshou Stream of Thought. We are back. And we're back, and we mean business, because expect a lot of gushing. Like, if you know anything about the show, we're going to be covering... Yeah, Mount Gushmore, thank you. Like, if you know anything about the show we're going to be talking about today, this has basically lit a fire amongst, the anime community. Like, everyone's raving about it. And now it's our turn to, throw our 2 cents in. I am, of course, Shadon, and joining me from across the pond but close to my heart is the Subtle Doctor.
Hello, sir. What is up? How are you?
I don't know. What's dog? What's up, dog? You know? All that kind of thing.
I know. God. Is that how we're going to start this off? To our new audience?
Get it out of my system now. I'm getting it out of my system. I'm getting it out of my system early, you know?
Woof.
I'm sorry, but I had to get it out there early. Anyway, yes, we are here today to talk about Keep Your Hands Off the Eizouken, which is the...
Okay, alright. Let me stop you right there.
Uh-oh. Have I mispronounced it already? Have I screwed it up? I've made a boo-boo, haven't I?
2 things. 1, yes, and 2, I don't want you to stop. Look, everyone. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs. It's Warui Deshou, as Shadon said. We're talking about this amazing show. And Yukinon and chat is going off about it. So, in case you're new to the show, every show is always someone's first show, is the way I try to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Shadon is a serial mispronouncer of all things Japanese.
Everything.
And look,
everything. Japanese.
I'm not fluent in Japanese. Like, Vergelia makes fun of me for the way I pronounce Japanese things all the time. It's just it's sort of our watermark, a brand kind of thing, if you will, to just butcher Japanese.
I mean, if I ever actually go to Japan and I try to order a beer, I half expect to be served a pint of toilet cleaner or detergent. It's just how it's going to go. Let's be honest with ourselves here.
There's an incredible YouTube series that Danny from Anime has linked to me. I wish I could think of it off the top of my head, but it is of a British man talking in Japanese and just really butchering it. It said it made him think of you. It's so good. Oh my god.
Everyone has their flaws. What can they say?
Well, listen, if this is... You're doing good. You're doing good if this is your fault. And it adds unintentional comedy to the show, which I'm a fan of.
Easy breezy. What can I say?
Oh boy. Well, Shadon, I'm so excited to be talking about this show with you. I'm so excited to be covering a Masaki Yuasa thing with you.
Again,
in real time, episodically.
I mean, last time we covered Masaki Yuasa, I believe that was us looking at Devilman Crybaby when we covered it with, you actually mentioned, Danny, and of course Kay from Anime Herald. Shout out to you both. When, Masaki Yuasa just decided that as part of his show, he would casually end the world.
Yeah, a murder happened. I was killed during that show.
I mean... Go listen to our episode on that. It's actually on our YouTube. And just, he blew my brain out with that particular show. It was just incredible. And now he's back, and he's done it again. I mean, spoilers for my feelings on this show, but I'm glad that Masaki Yuasa took all the difficulty out of deciding what my anime of the year 2020 is. And he's done it early for me as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yuasa-san. Thank you.
Could you think of like a better person to adapt this show? I know we're getting into the discussion now. We got plenty of other things to preamble, but like
about the only person I could think who could even compete in that same ballpark would be Ikuhara, but his sensibilities lie differently.
Yeah. I mean, he's interested and enamored in different things. Like Yuasa just seems to like love animation and expressiveness, and that's like what sort of in the DNA of this story. So I feel that this was a really good match. I think they both have a very good sense for like blending reality with absurdity or like unreality, as it were, which is what happens in this one. Although Ikuhara's tendencies say to be towards more the human condition, whereas Masaki Yuasa is just, I love this shit and I'm going to make you love it too. And like, you've got me convinced. And to Zofang in chat, I don't know if Katamori will kill everyone, but she certainly has killed me already. So
she'll kill for money.
+1 to the, for money. Oh my god!
I'm right.
I do know you're right. She's referred to by the episode director as an intellectual yakuza, which I completely agree.
I mean, hey, I didn't realize we'd get a stealth killer kill sequel, but I'm glad to see Karen Satsuki's still doing all right.
It's true.
I mean, come on, tell me you didn't think that she looks a little tinsy bit like her.
Oh my gosh, she's like the nerdy cousin.
Yes!
Hell yes! That's incredible.
I'm sorry,
Yuki,
but it's true.
Yuki, we're going to talk about the voice actors. Shadon. Shadon. You're so right. That did not like cross my mind, but that's an incredible shout.
It's true. All right, we'll stay this back on track now. We'll bring this back to some sort of like actual structured discussion.
Yeah.
Because Lord knows, I think you and me just literally want to go, well, like the girls in the show, and just go off into everything and talk about all the wonderful things in this single like episode. But we have to have a bit of structure.
Yeah.
So, the last time we covered Masaki Yuasa was indeed Devilman Crybaby. I love that show. It kind of blew me away just for how casually it went from small-scale stuff to Armageddon, but while still being very intimate and character-driven. And Yuasa's own sensibility... I mean, I described it like back then as being something that, to me, felt like it was animated in, well, a lava lamp, appropriately enough.
Oh, yeah. That's such a good... Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Intangible and unreal a little bit, and that kind of fit the mood and the setting of the piece. So now he's back. I don't think he's done anything since Devilman prior to this. I could be wrong, mind you. I've been merely kind of oblivious to all this.
I think... Oh, boy. You're catching me off guard. So I think that the movies he did came out. The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, and You Over the Wall.
I knew I was getting something.
Yeah, I can't remember if one or both of those came out in Japan after, but certainly they were released over here after... I want to call it DMC. Devilman Crybaby came out. We never did get that amazing pizza delivery scene from Devilman Cry.
I guess he just wasn't feeling motivated for it. Virgil joke. Oh, it's cracking. We're walking. But we are indeed going to talk about this episode and all the things behind it. First off, Doc, I think you've got some introductory stuff to cover, though, I believe. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. For this episode and an indeterminate number of episodes here after this, Warui Deshou has a partner. We've teamed up. We've done a gatai.
Don't you mean fusion? Like this?
Oh, yes. We did the fusion dance with our friends over at the Anime Herald.
Woo!
Yeah. The Anime Herald is, like I said, partnering up with WD, and you'll be able to catch the podcast of our Eizouken discussions over on Anime Herald. And I know that there is going to be a lot of people over there that haven't been exposed to our stuff before that are tuning in for the first time later on demand. And so I will tell all of you guys, our kind of core audience, how to support the Anime Herald and help out Samantha and those guys. Something just popped up on my screen. Oh, it's this. I hate you, Apple. Why do you tell me every day to update shit? Stop it. I haven't updated iTunes in 2 years. What are you doing? Important shit.
Tim Cook really does not want us to cover this particular episode. Damn it, Tim. Why can't you just make phones? Make some fucking phones.
Just go back to making phones and watches. Anime Herald will tell you guys who are WD people how to support them later on in the show once we have finished our summarizing between the summary period and the talking points period. But for now, for those of you who are listening from the Herald, we wanted to take just a little wee moment. Promise we won't take too long to do this. To tell all of you guys kind of who we are. Like, each one of us talk about how we came into anime, like our kind of bona fides, like how long we've been in it, what some of our favorite stuff is, and then what our kind of goals or what we hope to achieve with this, like the podcast and our anime criticism and things like that, just to give you like a better handle on who we are if you're kind of coming into this for the first time. So Shadon, why don't you kick us off, bud?
Well, if you happen to be listening to this in podcast format and can't see the video goes along with it, I'm bald as fuck. That's my primary attribute. There you go.
Baff.
All right, wrap it up. Moving on. No, I kid, of course. So, speaking for myself here, like, I only actually really got into anime relatively recently, and when I say relatively, I mean in 2013. Now, you might be self, that's a long time ago, and you look old and haggard as hell, mate. To which, you'd be right. But a lot of people that I have met in my time doing this podcast have actually been watching anime a lot longer, yourself included. But it was around that time where I actually became independent. I was able to, like, start watching stuff on my own, directing more of my own life, that kind of thing. And I had this kind of, like, nascent interest in it since I was younger, where I caught, like, stuff like Gundam Wing. That's the sound of me blowing my brains out. You know, what an episode of that or so, like on Toonami in the UK, things like that. And then I started picking up other things, like I watched Ghost in the Shell. All that kind of gateway stuff that you're probably very intimately familiar with and maybe have actually experienced yourself. And since then, my tastes have diversified quite a lot. If you want to know what my current favourites are, ranking like pretty high at the top of everything is Mario Penguin Drum, Land of the Lustrous, Beastars very recently was a very, very strong contender. I'm also a huge fan of Berserk 1997. Macross is a big thing for me, as you can no doubt tell if you happen to be looking at the video. So I'm into quite a very eclectic amount of stuff, but I'm also pretty open-minded on trying practically anything. I mean, if you're new to us, like, just to give you a sample of, like, what we covered last year in 2019, we did The Promised Neverland, we did Sarazanmai, we did Given, we did Vinland Saga. We've done all sorts of different shows of varying stripes and creeds and such, and about varying different topics. And Doc is now currently looking like he's trying to just, you know, restrain himself from having, you know, his head explode.
You left out the most wonderful show that we covered.
No, and you think that was by accident? Did you think I admitted that just because? Oh god, we're not even talking about it. Fuck it. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Yuki. Thanks for filling that in on the chat there. Much appreciated. So that's like my métier, really. Like, I actually joined and started doing this podcast basically because I wanted to start talking with more and more people that I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do so in real life, owing to the place I live, the circle of friends I grow, just circumstances and such, to, you know, get more engaged with the particular medium, this thing that I'm very passionate about. And, well, we're doing it 4 years later, so something must have gone right with it, I hope. And going forward, that's basically what I want to continue doing. I want to continue experiencing new things, testing myself both as an audience member and as a critic. You know, learn a couple more things about myself in the process. Like, I mean, a lot of the anime that I've watched since that, you know, to start in 2013, where I started picking things up like Steins Gate, like, a lot of it's been very formative to me as a person. Helps, like, you know, give me a better understanding of who I am. That's the reason why, the way I listed Land of the Lustrous up quite so high, because that in turn was quite formative for me. Beastars more recently. I could go on, but I'll not bore you to death with specifics. But that's basically me in a nutshell. Also, I accept donations of alcohol. It's got to be strong alcohol. I don't want no, like, wheat Australian Foster's shit. Get me something decent. Just saying. Okay,
so for me, I was a Toonami kid, though I started... I guess I, like, watched, you know, Voltron and Gigantor that came on the Sci-Fi Channel when I was a wee lad, but I didn't really know those were anime. But once Dragon Ball Z hit Toonami and I happened to channel surf, that's right, channel surf, if you don't know what that is, I don't blame you, but channel surfed right on by, and...
We're so old.
We are very old. And so I hopped back because I just had to know what in the world was this cartoon happening on my screen. People were dying. There was a green man, people shooting ki. it was great, and I went to the library and read all about Dragon Ball and what anime was, and have been a fan ever since. Kind of off and on through different phases of my life, but post grad school, I would say, was when I really got back into it and started caring about, appropriately as this episode kind of puts it, like that this stuff was made by people. And started picking my shows based on who was creating them and the kind of history of them and the legacy of the studios and things like that, as opposed to like the fucking key art that was posted in Anime Suki.
And then you met me and let me start picking shows for us to watch together, and that all went really well, didn't it?
Pear-shaped, as you might say, and over on your side of the pond. Yeah. Well, for I guess like over 20 years, like late 90s, I've been a fan. And what I wanted to do with this podcast and criticism. So, I don't know. I want
You want to educate me. You want to whip me into shape and make me have some actual decent taste. Well, you may well have succeeded.
So when we started this whole thing, well, also thank you. That would be, if you're not joking, I appreciate that. It's funny, like I did sort of choose you and Vergalia, our podcast partner, who's been with us since the very beginning, but can only kind of occasionally dip in and out these days.
Consumed by real life.
Yes, exactly. In the same way that Asakusa was sort of, the computer monitor like grew large enough to consume her chair and sucked her in.
You make it sound like the Vargelia's just got like this massive CRT monitor stuck on her head, and she's had it there for like the past 2 years and she's been running around trying to get it off.
You just see like a pair of legs from the knees down coming out of the television, and that's Vergalia. But I wanted to. That is part of it, Shadon, that you brought up. I wanted to get like people at different kind of stages of their anime journey. Like you were pretty new. Vergalia still claims to not be an anime fan, despite watching a lot of anime.
That's actually not a bad strategy. I mean, I guess that maybe, Vargelia's parents in turn hired an MIB to stop her from attending anime club.
That's right.
I could be right.
Maybe she is. Tsubame. Perhaps that's also Vergalia. I'm going to mess the names up of these characters.
I've actually written them down specifically for this purpose. Not that's going to help me, pronounce them properly.
It's not going to help me either. But
I need a swear jar.
But what I want to try to do is just create a kind of unique space. Like there's a lot of different podcasts and sort of digital media, YouTube shows or whatever that I have been listening to and watching for a while that are elements of those that aren't really in anime podcasting or YouTube videos, at least that I've seen. Like a lot of it is very serious, and to be sure, like we have our own
some of the subject matter we've covered
we delve into, but I don't mean like in terms of like covering weighty topics only, but I mean like, I don't know, like we do fucking stupid impressions and shit. I just did a mime bit on the air. Our podcasts, our hours long podcasts originally, like there's a lot of skits, things like that. I'm influenced by things like the Dan Le Batard Show, which is a really great synthesis of like sort of pop culture, sports, and like actual good kind of commentary and analysis and that sort of thing. Maybe the Giant Bombcast, like the loose nature of it. I wanted to try to like incorporate those elements into a space, and I started out wanting to just kind of do it for myself, but I've grown to really love our community. So
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, and make a space where that kind of thing is there, and people can feel like relaxed and kind of safe, but also feel like these guys also and gal really connect with the anime, and they know stuff. We can repeat facts to you, we can read Sakuga blog back at you and Wikipedia, but Shadon, you talked about in our Ghibli coverage like that the unique thing we can bring to it is our own experiences and our own feelings about the art that we are interfacing with, and we really want to try to lean into that. more so than, and I totally respect the people that want to like talk about like animation cuts because that's super valuable.
Indeed.
But that's just not our forte.
No, I mean, I'm not an expert on anything, really, to be quite honest. But I think that, that for all that, it's certainly very valuable to have, like, in-depth dissections of, like, say, animation, keyframing, Sakuga and all that, or even, like, understanding translation, adaptation, culture, all the various myriad things that you can chuck in. At the end of the day, like, it's also valuable just to talk about how you reacted emotionally to something. And that can either be in the positive in terms that it did, like, you felt a sense of tension, or that you felt sad for a character, or that you felt elated. Like when I talked about Premiere, for example, like, and how, hey, you know what? As great as this film looks, I was actually just like, boom! I was like, I wanted to just jump out of my chair throughout most of that film. That's a valuable insight of itself, because I think it speaks to, like, the vibe that you get. And in turn, you can also then talk, for example, about how, oh, I watched this show, this thing happened to this character, and do you know what my reaction was? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. Oh boy. Well,
so we do cover a lot of different stuff. We're by no means experts in anything, but we do try and give it our fair shake. And we'll certainly be doing that because we're going to be covering in Eizouken a couple of bits about animation and production. We're going to be talking about the influences in particular as well. Like, I think there's actually no less than 3 Ghibli references in this episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to be bringing those up, which I'm quite looking forward to.
Totally.
And then talking also about characters and all sorts of stuff. Like, I mean, God,
there's a lot.
There's a lot, and I'm ready to just cut loose.
Let's dive in. Okay, so really quickly, before we actually start talking about the episode proper, we always try to do this on Stream of Thought as opposed to Second Stream. We want to talk about the creatives just for a minute behind it. So we've already mentioned the man's name. Most people who are going to come to this show already know the guy, Masaki Yuasa, founder of Science Saru, director of Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, director of Devilman Crybaby, The Tatami Galaxy, Kick Heart.
He's an anime warlock.
I mean, he really is.
I mean, to create the stuff that he does with this kind of vision and passion, I honestly don't think it's possible for mortal men to do that. I literally think that he's, like, whipping up pentagrams or some stuff and summoning, like, this show from, like, the darkest pits of hell. In the best kind of way, of course. A
very colorful, fluffy hell. But, Masaki Yuasa is someone who's been important to me for a long time. And I don't want to... So this is not me... I talked to you about this off air, that there are some kind of gatekeepy comments about, like, well, where were you guys when the old Masaki Yuasa TV series was airing? Where was the hype train then? Nerds? And I just want to put the brakes on that and say this is not what I'm about. Because I think we should all just be happy that Yuasa is famous now, is a known quantity.
Smash the gates. Yeah. Smash the gates.
Like Crybaby was this huge phenomenon. Kick Heart in 2013, really important for him, getting that Kickstart animation. The fact that his movies are coming over here now, and he's being, sort of like targeted is not the right word, but like selected, like
recognized
to bring, selected to do these huge projects and recognized, yes. And like his old stuff is getting put in print. You can buy Kaiba now. Fucking Kaiba you can buy now. I never in a million years after watching that show, I watched the fan subs of that show, never ever thought it would see the light of day here.
Well, if I may just add, the thing about gatekeeping, folks, is that there seems to be some sort of temporal element to it where you had to be there at that time. But to not put too mildly here, would be gatekeepers. The shows that you're trying to say that they should have been around to watch at the time they came out, they still exist. They can still be watched, and you should be grateful for anyone in a relatively niche genre such as anime in general to get as many people behind works that you like anyway, regardless of what time they join into it.
Totally.
So check yourself, please.
And also, I mean, it's not like Kemonozume and Kaiba, like they came out when streaming wasn't a thing. pre-2010. Tatami Galaxy was one of the first shows ever that I remember streaming on Funimation and Hulu when it came out, and like it was this really weird looking show, and no one knew who Masaki Yuasa was, and streaming was not established in any way, so like of course there wasn't really hype for it back then. So I feel like that's also kind of unfair and what's the word I'm looking for, like revisionist history on like how the community was set up and what was happening. Like I feel like the first big exposure that and really accessible thing was Kit Hart. Yeah, since then, you know, the next TV thing he made was a ping pong, and that was more well received. More people liked it, but it was also weird looking. Not everyone's into that mangaka style. I happen to love it. I don't have their name in front of me, but it's the same mangaka that did Black and White that did ping pong. I think he's tremendous. Anyway, that's Yuasa. Yuasa is a known quantity.
What about Science Saru? We got to talk about them.
Yeah, that's right. Science Saru. So, like, I think we should talk about Maki Motohashi, who she did the storyboards and was the episode director for this first episode. And she has never episode directed or storyboarded a full-length episode of animation before. She's
lied.
Done. Nope.
You lied. That's like, all right, fucking Pinocchio. I see your nose growing longer there. I don't buy that for a second, because this episode is too good, too well directed, too well storyboarded for you to tell me that this person had never done a.
Well, I'm relying on Sakugaburo here, but she'd only done storyboards for a short. She'd never done a 30-minute thing before, or I guess, 30-minute time slot thing, but she feels like, you know, the episode feels very Yuasa, and it's her point of view that, like, you know, I think especially because she's so new at doing this, that, like, an episode director is underneath the series director, and the vision of the series director should trump all. And, you know, she leaned on him heavily for things like action scenes that she'd never done. But she did an amazing job. I mean, even the mangaka, is it Sumito Owara? Like, when he saw the preview for it on Twitter, he was like, "Oh my god, the storyboards are so good."
I know. I mean, wasn't it also true apparently that Masaki Yuasa decided to cover, or rather adapt Eizouken, because someone literally like tweeted at him saying, "Please adapt this." He's like, "Okay." I wish it was that simple.
This is like I can't believe that happened. Like, it's the sort of thing that makes you be like, does God maybe really exist? You know what I mean? Like, how?
I think you and I, Doc, live in, like, speaking for ourselves here, of course, like, live in some sort of, like, karmic rhythm where we end up covering, well, I mean, speaking for myself here more than anything, like, where you cover absolute crap, and then you get something just amazing drops in your lap like this. But yeah, like, I mean, that it's just that simple that someone said, do this thing, and you're like, okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'll do it.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
We got Naoyuki Asano, who is the character designer and the animation director, and you may remember Asano from Osamatsu-san, a really, like, kind of sitcom, like, the remake of the super old 1960s Osamatsu-san from 2016 and 2017, I want to say. It was really popular. It got a lot of new fans to the IP, and it was a really fun comedy show from what I saw of it, which was admittedly not much, but the character designs are very striking. And they are here, Asano, doing their thing. And the voice acting, Shadon.
Oh.
The voice acting. You cannot mention this. And I want to talk about this. I know you're...
I'm laughing.
You're maniacally laughing.
I'm laughing because I know where this is going to lead, and I know that I'm going to have my requisite reaction of, you know, my eyes like just popping out of my head like the mask at what we're going to learn. So just take it away, Doc, please. Tell us about the voice actors and actresses for these characters.
Well, I just want to talk about the actresses for the three main ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's really impressive that Mizusaki and Asakusa, at least to my research, which is Anime News Network Encyclopedia, which is pretty reliable, they don't have any other voice acting credits. They're
not surprisingly incredible. Not unheard of. Like, at least even in stuff I've covered. I mean, when I talked about Tokyo Godfathers, two of the three, again, were brand new to the roles, but they still nailed them.
I mean, I love that Science Saru it seems to be part of their ethos. Like, when you look at, bringing in Motohashi to do the storyboards, and then these two actresses, like, let's get new people in. Let's get, like, fresh blood and new enthusiasm and let people experiment and try stuff. Like, that's so great. And I think, Asakusa, done by Sairi Ito, like, Ito knocks it out of the park. Out of the park. I adore her voice as our main character.
It's great.
She's so good. And Tsubame's wonderful.
It speaks like to, how I would say, if you said to me, hey, listen to this character, I'd be like, wow, that's pretty good. How much stuff has she done before?
Yep.
And you went, no, I'd be like,
I was really surprised.
What?
Sounds so natural.
The thing about all three of the characters' voices as well is they all feel very distinct, which I think is very, very welcome. Like, not to say, of course, the characters themselves are distinct in terms of their personalities. We'll get to that in a bit. But I really, really appreciate that and how they stood out, like, orally.
Totally. Well, and here's the thing that you were getting at with your pain and laughter.
Oh, boy. It all comes back, doesn't it? Like, time is a linear circle, isn't it?
It's flat. So Mutsumi Tamura was the actor that played Kanamori. And why is that significant, you may ask? Well, I think, first of all, Tamura is really accomplished, has a huge resume full of lots of video games and anime.
I love how you're sequencing this.
I'm gonna.
I can see the gears grinding in your malevolent building little head up there, because you're gonna lead it. You're gonna drop the bombshell right at the end, aren't you? I know it. Carry on. Go on.
If you've played Under Night in Birth, she is the voice of Byakuya from that game, which is super cool. She's Gabo in Dragon Quest Heroes 2. She's in The Last of Us, which is cool. In a whole bunch of anime. Again, so many like really like prominent roles, guest roles, and also like a ton, it seems to me, of like boy A. Girl B. My favorite role I copied and pasted to you in the Discord. Gundam, Naruto, like, again, huge stuff. But also, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children as inhabitants of Midgar Edge. That's an amazing credit. But okay, Shadon, all right. Let me hide it no more. When I told you this in Discord, you died. Your favorite anime of all time, Darling in the Franxx. Kanamori, the same actress, Mutsumi Tamura, plays Zorome from Darling in the Franxx. That's right.
Well, at least she played one of the least shit characters in that show. I mean, that's a relative thing in merely, but you take what you can get when you're talking about that. Oh, yeah, I did die a little bit when you said that. I felt like I wanted to, bleach my brain out, put that, little bit of nugget of information down the memory hole. But there ain't no going back on that now. There ain't no saves coming on this one. It all comes back to Franxx, doesn't it? Even though I try not to talk about it. I try not to talk about it. I try not to bring it up again. But it finds a way to come back. It's the cockroach of anime. It just won't die.
Franxx finds a way, Shadon, to, in a closed park environment, change its sex and mate and have dinosaur babies that come for you in the night.
I hate you.
Okay, so creatives, we've talked about them. Now it's time to get into the show, to talk content.
Right. This is a big responsibility. Like, holy crap, I've got a bit of pressure on it. All right, so welcome. Let's talk about Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken Episode 1, The Greatest World, which I'll explain what that is when we get to the end.
Oh, I've got big notes about that. Let's go, you big notes.
Big notes.
Big
notes. Thinkums, big notes about that. So we get an opening of Asakasa and her family, and getting the first mispronunciation out of the way, folks. I apologize. But They are traveling in a car moving home. And I mentioned there were 3 Ghibli shout-outs in this episode. And this is, I think, the very first one, because this reminded me a lot of the opening of Spirited Away.
Yes.
Not, of course, anywhere near the same story, mind you, but, you know, young girl being transported from one place to another, a bit anxious about it, and then finding a magical new world to look at, even though it is the mundane real world, which, by the way, pin in that, because that will be very important for what we talk about later. But yeah, this is when she's younger as well, I should know, and we get to immediately learn who she is and that she is very attentive about the environment, loves to draw, loves, like, you know, conceptualizing. And then, shortly after, like, exploring, like, her new apartment block area and, like, meticulously documenting diagrams, we get the scene that just made me immediately say, right, I could turn this anime off now and I'm good because this is just great, which is this incredibly charming and just downright lovely little, like, vignette of, like, her in pencil drawing, traveling this imagined world with these cute little big planet noises that she's making as she's imagining herself traveling, including, like, a Venetian-like canal of sorts, with her getting an apple from it, and I was just there, like, it's like...
You were fed.
This is amazing. I was fed, yes. But unfortunately, reality is a cruel and harsh mistress and intervenes to, you know, wake her back to the real world where her mother is going to pick up her father from the airport, and so she's left to go watch anime on her own, you know. And this is where she goes through what I presume is like the non-shit version of kids' YouTube. I mean, it's even got the YouTube logo, to be fair. There ain't no toy unboxing ads on this one, folks. There's actually good stuff to watch. So she finds an anime which is called... I'm actually going to get the specific title up on screen so I don't get it wrong here.
It's a fake title for a real show.
It is a fake title for a real show, yeah. Conan of the Lost Island.
Referencing I believe 78, it's certainly late 70s, television show directed by, speaking of Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki. One of, I think maybe the only TV show he's directed? Maybe. I'm pretty sure that's the case, but maybe there's something I'm not thinking of. But it's a Nippon Animation thing, and they were responsible for doing, like, the World Masterpiece Theater movies, which were, like, a huge thing internationally for exposing a lot of different people in a lot of different places around the world to anime. But Conan is, if you know where to look for it, readily available. And it's great. You should definitely watch it if you like Miyazaki.
If you ever, like, people said Masaki Yuasa is an animator, like, he's got that affinity and attention to detail for, like, you know, references and such. I personally haven't watched Future Boy Conan, but what I have seen is I've seen people doing side-by-side screenshots. I think it was actually KVIN Kevin who did this, shout out to him. It is literally, apart from the way it's styled in terms of, like, its flat, almost, like, pastel-y colours, note for note, practically the same, like, show replicated in Eizouken, which, as I understand it from what I've read elsewhere, and I can't immediately recall the sources, they didn't have immediate permission to do this, but they just did it anyway.
Shouts to anime, right? Shouts to, like, people like Ikuhara and Yuasa that are just like, you know what?
Fuck it.
Fuck it. We haven't got permission from the higher ups to do this or include this. Yeah. We're gonna do it anyway.
I've got a budget that can afford me to animate all this stuff, but do you know what it can't afford? For me to give a shit. Let's go!
I know.
Oh, and it's incredible. Great. So, after that, though, what then happens is that Asuka is... sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. She starts watching this, and she becomes enraptured by it. She becomes, like, totally immersed in it. And when I say totally immersed, this is when we get what I think is the quintessential, perfect encapsulation of what it's like to watch something that totally engrosses you as a viewer. Which is just her, like, flying into the screen, like, on her chair as she gets closer and closer to it, completely drawn into the world. And that nails the feeling so perfectly, in my view. Like, if ever you wanted, like, and like, this episode, like, in itself is fantastic, of course, but even just the bit before the opening perfectly encapsulates, in my opinion, what this entire show is about thus far, which is, it's a love letter to animation, it's a love letter to creativity, and it's a love letter to immersion and, you know, the joy of, like, getting involved in a world.
And I loved that it happened on, like, an incredibly mundane day, for the most part. I mean, she did have fun exploring her apartment complex, like you said, in drawing, but, like, she had the boring car ride. She had the, like, she was stuck inside a rainy day, like, kind of the confines of her her actual life, her empirical surroundings were pretty constrictive, but like, yeah, she was able to like totally lose herself. And, you know, she said she's had this epiphany that anime was created by people, and she was just pulled into the content in that way. And like, so many children, like, it's animation could be so formative for them. I think it was for both me and you, even if like we weren't kind of like lifelong fans, or like, I mean, I mostly was, but there was a period in high school where I was like, animation, I'm too cool for animation. But I came back to it.
I mean, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I had like the germ of it planted in me when I was much younger, but in the end, I, you know, eventually embraced it. And I will guarantee every single one of you listening to this, be it you listening live now or if you're listening to it later, if you're an anime fan, I know, as sure as I've got a hole in my backside, that you've had a moment just like that, where you've watched something, not even necessarily Future Boy Con, could be any show that you care to name, a personal favourite of yours, one of many, maybe it's happened with many shows, where you've had that happen, where you've just literally been whisked away, and you've become a part of it, you know, you become immersed in it, breathing it in, you know, soaking it in.
Yeah.
I certainly have.
It envelops you, like it becomes your world, like you become almost part of it in a weird way. And I love that, like, the childhood drawings that you were talking about. As a dad, as a parent of, especially my 9-year-old loves to drawing all the time, every day. And so this was really like a kind of a sentimental scene for me. And yeah, I mean, I love seeing like you know, and she draws way more detail later, but seeing those childlike drawings was pretty special for me.
It was pretty great. So we of course then have the opening, which is called Easy Breezy, and like, I think if ever, you know, you wanted to become an anime critic and you wanted to write a review of the show, Masaki Yuasa nails it. 10 out of 10, Easy Breezy. There's your tagline. Done.
Yeah.
File that one away. Off to the pub. Love it. So we now, of course, cut to Asukusa like when she's older. This is her when she's in high school, I believe. And she's observing the world from the top of what I presume to be the high school's roof. One thing I'd like to note, by the way, is she's wearing a camo hat and also has a camo backpack, which, apart from giving her a bit of unique visual identity, you know, otherwise since they're wearing matching uniforms, I love how it makes her look like she's an explorer.
Yes. She's always wanted to be one.
Yeah, she's an explorer, like, which not only is great for, like, you know, explaining her character visually, but also serves to, like, maybe build or rather set up a possible thing later where she feels detached from other people a little bit. She does say she doesn't do well in crowds. I'm not talking, like, to the level of melodrama here, but rather, you know, we're getting, I mean, come on, this is a show about the creation of anime and, like, the fine details, and we're already getting it. So, they know what they're doing. But this is the point where Asukusa is joined, of course, by Kanamori, i.e. nerdy Kiryu and Satsuki.
Yes, the intellectual Yakuza.
The intellectual Yakuza, yeah. And they have a conversation which we learn more about both of them. We learn, for example, that Kanamori herself isn't necessarily a fan of anime, so to speak. And also is very much a mercenary in terms of, hey, do I get money out of this? You know, I want to get paid for this. I mean, credits to Kanamori, if she ever becomes an actual artist, she'll make sure she doesn't ever, you know, work for exposure. So good on her. But what we learn about this is that Asukusa actually notes all of the environments around them and how that's been built up over time in a kind of organic manner, like not really planned so much as just like layers upon layers, like rings of a tree trunk, if you will. This is going to be very important for something I'll talk about later, so just keep a note on this. And she shows off, you know, all of her drawings to Kanamori. And the chemistry between these two is just also really great. Like beyond just like indulging in like, you know, the environmental details and all that, I love how they have good banter. In which you can tell immediately that Kanamori, while being a little bit brusque here and there, and also maybe not necessarily, you know, all into anime as to the extent that Asukusa is, like, she's still enthusiastic and supportive in her own way.
But the honorifics that Kanamori and Asakusa use too is like another little way you can tell like about their relationship, that the giving each other a hard time, or really Kanamori giving Asakusa a hard time, is part of their kind of playful friendship, because you know,
they've got what we in Britain call banter.
Yes, Kanamori she, I believe, instead of san, she calls, and then Kanamori I believe calls her Asakusa chi, but the she, chi, those kind of like honorifics are very cute and very like nicknamey, and yeah, it just really underscores that aspect of their friendship.
So they're arriving at an anime screening of Future Boy Conan, as it turns out.
Hey!
And Asakusa goes into laborious detail about the way in which, the animation is used to convey meaning and physicality. Basically, doing a better job than I ever personally could do on a podcast. Maybe she should run one. I reckon she'd be a dab hand at it. So they're watching all of this, of course, and Kanamori's throwing some quips back and forth about what's going on and the fact that she talks perhaps a little too much. But then their theatre is invaded by unexpected guests. It's the MIBs. Here come the MIBs. One of them being, they're MIBs apparently, which I thought was just a great little quip. MIBs.
Meaning Braku. so good.
This is when we're introduced to Mizusaki, who introduces herself in turn to Asakusa and Kanamori, and pinches Asakusa's hat. And again, take note of this scene, because it actually relates to what I talked about before, about the organic environment and the building up over time. She, evades these MIBs as they're watching Future Boy Conan play out, ducking under them. So Kanamori and Asakusa, go after her, and they end up on a stage, in this theatre. The MIB in question has caught up with Mizusaki and is actually, talking to her, although we aren't privy to the conversation. But it's a heated one, nonetheless. At which point, in truly wonderful dramatic fashion, Kanamori makes herself and Asakusa take to the stage. She's the one, as we'll learn throughout this episode, pushes Asakusa into action when otherwise she might not be compelled to do so. And literally brings them up to intervene and, get Kanamori out of the scrape that she's in. Before they try to escape, though, I should note that Mizusaki, the reason that she is unhappy is because the MIB says, what possibly might be the greatest line in recent anime history, which is, our orders are not to let you join the anime club. I mean, what do I even say about a line like that? What do I even say? That's magnificent. Incredible. I have to give credit to the voice actor for that. I don't know who he is, but he just says it with such a straight face. I don't even know how I would possibly be able to say that without pissing myself laughing. I know. But yeah, it turns out that what her parents wanted to do, they're the people who've hired the IBs, is they want her to become an actress. And I'm not going to labour the point too much, but I find it deeply ironic in a kind of ridiculous way how, they want her to take up a profession in which she acts like someone other than herself, which in turn would make her act like something other than herself.
Very astute observation. Yeah,
kind of crazy when you think of it that way. But anyway, in what can only be described as wacky Muppets-esque hijinks, the group escape and manage to get up to the top of the stairs, where they end up getting one of the MIBs to fall through a trap door down a ramp, and it's just complete lunacy.
So good, this physical comedy,
it's great.
The fact that, when the chase begins, they're walking, but animated faster, just sort of scurrying around the screen I laughed out loud. And then,
when they pick her up, they pick Mizusaki up.
And then, Asakusa's pulling the wrong levers. She pulls the first one, and the trapdoor opens up, to the left of the guy, and he's just sort of oh, you done screwed up now. And then pulls the stairs. Or no, it pulls the second one and just the curtain drops in the background. Totally useless. But then happens to pull the stairs to get him to slide in the trapdoor, and it all works out. It's so good.
It's great, honestly. So they managed to escape. You know what, Grizzly? I actually was thinking that, you know what? If the background had moved, but they had not, it would have been like the Scooby-Doo motion. We're getting down to the cheap Hanna-Barbera animation made for $1. But anyway, no. So they leave. Now, what's happened in the intervening time is that Mizusaki, she spilled strawberry milk all over herself during this, unfortunately. It happens, Yeah. So they're taking her to a laundromat to go and, get her cleaned up. I would be remiss, by the way, if I didn't mention at this point that Kanamori has this incredible double Converse backpack. Which is just the best. It's completely
so
uncommented on, but it's great. And I want to imagine that you could separate it out so it becomes 2 handbags, because it's one shoe on each side.
Yeah,
that would be amazing.
Or at least 2 really big shoes.
Indeed. So they're walking over to the laundromat, and in doing so, they're observing the environment. Kanamori tries to actually prod Asakusa to talk more to Mizusaki about the fact that they like anime. She likes anime, because in turn, that's something that was brought up in conversation. Mm-hmm. While they were trying to escape, and also from what they overheard. And eventually they do get to the laundromat. Kanamori, despite being a mercenary kind of person, does, help Mizuzaki out by putting, some money in the laundromat to get her clothes cleaned. And this is the point where, they start talking about their shared passion because they realize that they've got this commonality. I should note, by the way, that Mizuzaki, as she was traveling from, the theater to the laundromat, and then when she arrives there, spends a lot of time observing the natural environment, looking at a cat in a back alley, for example, or when she's actually having her clothes dried, looks outside and observes the environment around her, including the river coming below. It's incredible stuff, like just, all this observation. This is the point where, they start talking to each other, and Mizusaki's very eager to show her work to Asakusa, but that's not reciprocal, not because, of course, Asakusa doesn't like her, but because Asakusa is very, very relatively introverted, I would say. Yeah. And this is the point where Kanamori, once again proves her worth as, the person who just gives them the subtle nudge, shall we say. Just literally takes the book out, gives it to her, and let's have a look through it while restraining Asakusa from lighting a beam, which is also funny in its own right, just because of the wonderful facial expressions. And they start discussing things like image boards, concept art, character stuff, and they realize that while they both are into drawing, they are into different things.
Yep.
Mizuzaki, for example, is more into characters, where Asakusa is more into concepts and environments. But this is the point where they start merging their work together, including pinning them together on against the window, like as an overlay, so the sunlight can come through. And this then continues for a little while, including them mentioning, I can't join the anime club, for example. They then start collectively designing this plane, this machine of sorts, after seeing an initial stage of it.
Can I just say really quickly before they do that? One thing I want to point out in the scene when they being Tsubame and Asakusa, when they are really kind of getting into it and they have fully submerged themselves in the creative process and are kind of dead to the outside world, and they're just bubbling and the enthusiasm, and they're drawing, and you can just the ideas are almost tangible, they're pulsing out of them, and sort of pulls back, and you can see Kanamori just in the background.
As planned.
I can see the money rolling in.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Yes.
It's great. It's
great. Good. Young Skywalker, right? For sure.
So indeed, this is the point where we transition as a hard cut, like with earlier in the episode, to... I'm going to have to say two things. Firstly, I mean, sure, maybe it might be out there, but I have never seen such a wonderful visual interpretation of creative synthesis between two people as I have in this episode. It, blew my... bang. I was just left a stunned mess at the end of it. And secondly, in the spirit of the episode, I'm going to try and do my best to enthusiastically describe this entire sequence. So... they are designing this wonderful dragonfly machine, which is your third Ghibli reference of 3, because we talked about Laputa in Own Christmas, and in Laputa, of course, the pirates have dragonfly machines. All of the a lot of the sound effects are being made by themselves, so the dragonflies are going that kind of thing.
It's great.
Yeah, so they're constructing the dragonfly, but then more MIBs show up.
It's the MIBs. Here come the MIBs.
In this little dream world they've come up with. And everything's kind of going to chaos and oh my god, the switch is on the outside. Can you go get it for me, Mizuzaki and Kanamori? Can you go handle it? And they go running out and they go take it out and they pull the switch down and they run back over here. They give it a kick out the door and then they're off. But then they're pursued by ice.
Ice! Yep.
Abolish those fuckers.
That's I was going to say, I just wonder, right? Wow.
It was in Pro-Mess, to be fair.
I'm just going to leave it there. I wonder. Okay.
Yeah, abolish ice. Fuck it.
Yep,
anyway.
Do it.
So, yeah, they managed to take off and leave the MIBs behind, but indeed, ice are in pursuit. It's all bang, 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 meow, meow. Sorry, I had to try... it's out of respect to this anime that I talk like that about this, because I just love this scene so much. It was just incredible. But they, they then try to go for a small gap between the buildings. And they managed to pull it off by having both Kanamori and Mizusaki actually lean out of the plane to weigh it down, because apparently they got hit at some point, and they lean it like leftways, and they managed to squeeze it through the gap, and then the ice plane, it crashes. Fuck them. And and it's just like, I should stress, by the way, all the stuff we're seeing here is all, again, very simple line drawings, concept art. It's basically the art we've seen in both of their sketchbooks, taken to, animation in their minds as a collective, group exercise.
Yeah, it still seems really malleable and unfinished, sort of smudgy. And my favorite bit is when, not my favorite bit, there's so many bits of the scene that I love, but a part in the beginning when they finish the design of the dragonfly, and you see, concept art that you might see in, an RPG companion book or whatever, that's, has lines pointing to all the different parts with descriptions of what they are. That's cool, but also the characters are walking around through that concept art. It's so good. I loved that.
It's great. And after getting through this little gap, they arrive at what to me looks like the exosphere, or basically the edge of outer space, where there is a meteor shower coming down. It's complete. Now, here's the thing, right? That is completely and utterly, incongruent to what happened before. Do you know what? I don't give two flying fucks. It was a great capstone, and it leads into a wonderful line from Asuka's, which is, I think is going to be, the anime's, overall, message, which is, this is the greatest world. But we'll get into that later, of course. You and I suspect, have a lot to talk about when it comes to that.
Big notes.
But that's big notes, big thinkums. But that's not the end of the episode. They then, of course, come back to reality, and in the truly authentic fashion of when you get so deeply involved in something that time just kind of evaporates, it's now nearly 8 o'clock, and Mizusaki has to leave.
Anime's on TV.
Anime's on TV, I've got to watch it live! And so they all leave the laundromat, including the final moment where it turns out she's left all her laundry behind because she was just that enthusiastic and hyped for it that she forgot to take, her clothes to.
Perfect.
And that's the episode. I don't even know if I did it real justice in explaining it, because honestly, I feel describing this verbally is all well and good, but this is such a visual show beyond even what we've discussed previously that I will probably never do it justice talking about it, Les.
If you haven't watched it, please go watch it.
My God. I mean, I was screenshotting this before, in preparation for this podcast, also for material we'll be preparing for elsewhere, and there's just so many wonderful little frames everywhere. It's just joyous, honestly. It's just pure joy watching this episode. When I first watched this, and when I watched it again, I'd say, I was grinning like the Cheshire Cat. It was just that good. Yeah. Oh, man. All right. So, now we're going to get on to the meat of things, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, before we jump into our discussion, I don't know about you, but I'm left a little breathless. So I would love to step away from heady discussion and talk about, once again, our friends at the Anime Herald, Shadon, and talk about how folks that are our core audience that are watching right now in chat, as opposed to Herald folks listening later on demand. Hi, Herald folks. I'm going to talk to everybody about how to, again, support the Anime Herald and what they are doing. Would it be too much if I just asked you to do a beatbox in the background while I do talk about AnimeHerald.com specifically? Okay, the clapping is not working for me. I'm sorry. Cut it.
Beatboxing was something I didn't put any skill points in, unfortunately, when I picked my character's class. I'm sorry, dog. I put it in baldness, drinking, and possibly also a little bit of anime critique.
That's okay.
Sorry, bro.
Those are the far more useful and relevant statistics. But let's talk about how you can support the Anime Herald on Patreon. Anime Herald will talk nerdy to you, they say. And they have a lot of people willing to do nerdy talk. Like I said, Samantha is running that place, and she and her folks really do bring together a great site with a ton of really good essays and articles about anime episodes, old and new, about video games, visual novels, just kind of the visual culture of Japan in general, weeby stuff, a lot of reporting as well, lots of in-depth con reports, different things like that. And if you sign up for their Patreon, so like us, they're very budget-friendly Patreon. There are 2 tiers. If you just toss them $1 a month, you can become a member of the Nerdy Talker tier, in which you get like early access to behind-the-scenes articles and exclusive access to a sort of retrospective thing they're doing called That 2007 Feeling, which is an in-depth look at that, and you get shouted out on their dispatch. And you could read my friend at Anime Commentary, Patrick, has got an article up that would give you access to on yokai in anime, which is a really interesting thing to examine. Patrick's a really good guy, maybe like the nicest man I've ever met on Twitter, which is saying a lot. It may seem like a low bar, but there are a lot of nice people on Twitter. Patrick, though, is incredibly generous.
He's a swell bloke.
Super nice. At Anime Commentary. You could follow him. You could read his stuff if you are on the $1 tier. On the $5 tier, you get to be part of their Discord, similar to the one we have, which we'll be talking to you about later. And then you can like help shape their content, right? You can vote on like podcast topics, Patreon blog pieces, and they also do like a seasonal watch along. They have a Herald Anime Club, and you can kind of help vote on that show. That's like a $5 tier. That's the Harris Helper tier. Again, you could support them. They're doing amazing work over there, and they are partnering with us, so we like them. Samantha and co, Seth, Brian, all you guys, love you guys and what you're doing. Keep up the good work. Throw a coin their way, because like I said, they are our special partner for, at the very least, a couple of early Eizouken episodes. More TBD. But that's Herald. Now, let's get back to Eizouken.
All right. So, since you actually talked about Patreon, we in turn should cover our Patron questions firstly. Get those
yes, indeed.
We're going to the big deal. We have 2 of them this week. By the way, if you're wanting to get involved in this, our own Patreon is up. Feel free to give that a look. If you get yourself in, I think, is it the $3 tier, if I remember correctly?
Mm-hmm.
You can get yourself the access to our Discord where you can ask us questions, which we covered live on air. Any question you want answered, it can be silly, it can be serious, it can be a blend of the two. Whatever you want. You want us to do shipping? I'll do shipping. I ain't talking about nautical stuff. I'll actually, talk about shipping. Anyway, that aside.
But if you did want to ask us about nautical, I guess we would have to answer it because that's the condition that we've set for ourselves.
Oh, are they going to get us to cover that boat girl thing now? Oh, great.
Yes.
That's it. Floodgates are open now. We're screwed. Anyway, no, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Warui Deshou. We'll, of course, go through all of that at the end because we, of course, actually want to talk about the show in the meantime. So, first question comes from Yukinon. Yukinon says the following. Midori was watching Conan of the Lost Island and was blown away by what the show did, getting immediately hooked on anime, realizing that someone has created that world. What was a moment in any anime that made you feel like you were truly experiencing an art form for the first time? Whew. That's gonna have to I talked before about how I got into anime around 2013. I'm gonna have to start dredging from my memory here.
Okay, I can try to take this one first.
Go on.
So, I don't want to necessarily say, ooh, Sakuga Daichi already has one. Naruto episode 133, that's a good pick. So I think for me, I am gonna pick something pretty early in the fandom that it didn't necessarily sort of make me seek out creators yet. Because like I said, this was I was 17 years old. But it did make me think about animation in a different way than I had been thinking previously. It really, really affected me. And that is Trigun.
Nice. Good choice. A good choice, my good sir.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of anime heretofore, looking for good action. I wasn't really interested in comedy. I was kind of, again, just looking for things that made me feel hype, some Dragon Ball, robot fighting, sort of the more insane things that happen in anime. Trigun, though, I can't remember the exact episode, but it is the episode where Vash fights the puppeteer, the puppet master.
Oh, yes.
And
is that Legato, was it? Mr. Bluesummers.
It was not. So Legato wasn't. This was one of the Gung Ho guns. It was.
He was one of the earlier ones, wasn't he?
Well, one of the later Gung Ho guns. And he's the whole time. This is when Vash is hanging out on this one ship. There's like a downed ship, and there's a guy named Brad that ends up dying because Vash doesn't choose to like break his vow of non-lethal violence. And like just that whole show really, really punched me in the gut and just made me think like, you know, I'm not necessarily just like watching these cool action things. Like anime can be a lot more. Anime can be something that taps in emotionally to, you know, struggles that I'm having to, it can be something that talks about moral philosophy. It can talk to us about metaphysics, about, you know, our kind of the human condition and what that's about. And I remember I was just kind of like down in the dumps for like 3 days after the ending of that show, just kind of laying around in bed thinking about it. And it really, really affected me and is a really formative memory for me.
I hear you on that. Well, it actually hit me as you started talking and what moment I would pick. Let's go back to the beginning of this very podcast and let's talk about Kyusugiga.
Okay, yeah.
Holy, like, I mean...
You got hit with a big hammer.
Yeah, well, I'm hitting this with a big hammer here because, like, it was a long time ago when we covered that. Don't get me wrong, folks. And I expect a lot of people who are currently listening probably have, probably have, like, no idea that we even covered it. It's not even available currently on our services at the moment because it's, like, literally the first episode we ever did.
You can get it on SoundCloud and YouTube. It's there. It's not on our Anchor feed. But it does still exist on SoundCloud.
It does indeed. But here's the thing, right? Like, up until the point in which I was asked to cover Kyusugiga as our first episode by yourself, I had kind of, like, cultivated the anime I always watched, basically in kind of a very limited scope. Mostly because at that point, streaming services weren't really a thing, and all I could really get was whatever I could buy at, say, HMV, which, by the way, the anime section HMV was bad. It was pretty dire. I mean, that's
Phantom.
Where I picked up...
Thanks, Phantom.
That's where I picked Phantom up from. Thanks a bunch for HMV. Oh, Jesus Christ. And also what I could find scraps of on Netflix, which at the time was pretty paltry.
It was so bad. Like in,
I mean,
like...
it was. I'm in the UK. It was like 12 titles long, and they all suck balls.
Like in 2011, 2012, it was like, you know, 50 episodes of Naruto, Elfen Lied, and why can I not think of it? Like Vexil the movie or some shit like the CG bullshit.
No, I have seen that. That was, oh man. Poor Paul Oakenfold. He didn't deserve to have his name attached to that.
It's so true. I really like his music, and I feel so bad that happened.
Man, I mean, to be fair though, they actually did advertise on the box, and when they're doing that, like, that's not a sly against him, that's a sly against the thing itself, because they know they have nothing else to sell it on. Anyway, that's beside the point. But Kyusugiga, like, up until that point, like, I'd watched stuff like, say, Steins Gate, Trigun, etc., and then certainly I'm not putting your, like, reaction to Trigun down, but for me, like, I felt that these all felt very kind of, how to put it, like, narratives which I think felt like they were very human, but at the same time, like, I don't think that the animation, like, truly went, like, completely crazy or wild.
No.
Like, where I wasn't, like, where I felt like I was, like, going, like, you know, to some strange place.
In fact, yes, Trigun's animation is actually bad. It was bad then. It's still bad.
Yeah, but, like, I mean, to some extent, I would say those shows could have been replicated out live action, not that I'm saying you should. But there's no way on God's green earth you could have remade Kyusugiga in live action. That to me felt very uniquely like an anime product for the first time. And as part of the podcast format, I was being challenged to, like, interpret it and digest it. And it just kind of took my breath away. And I thought, I've only experienced such a limited scope of things up until this point. Great things, don't get me wrong. Steins Gate still like a lot. Trigun still think is fantastic. I watched Cowboy Bebop, of course. I watched Persona 4 the animation. Other stuff like that I still am fond of. But I realised at that point that I had only got the tip of the iceberg, scratched the surface. Kyusugiga was like the eye-opener for me that made me realise how much more stuff there is out there. And it's to my shame I actually didn't broaden my horizons earlier, but now I've started getting to more things that kind of feel in that ilk where they are, like, uniquely anime products in the sense that they're unreplicatable in other formats. I mean, you wouldn't see Land of the Lustrous done as live action, I'll tell you that for free.
My wife and I are watching that now, by the way. Much to your delight. We're like 4 or 5 episodes in, and she's really sick, so we haven't got to like keep going. But man, it's getting good. It's getting real good. I'm into it.
Anyway, before I start squeaking a little bit at the fact that Doc's finally watching it after all this time, after all this time, I've literally been reaching down through the monitor and just shaking him by his throat, like, watch this fucking piece of shit. That, like, Kyusugiga was incredible. It was formative for me. It was like the first thing we did on the podcast, and it was the first time I felt truly challenged. And now, like, I realize, hey, that's the kind of stuff I need to be getting more of. That's when I realized what kind of like art that anime truly could be. There's certainly nothing like it still, I would argue. All right, I think that brings us to the end of our first Patreon question. So let's move on to the second. This one comes from Go Atomic Robot, and it goes something a bit like this. Anime about anime and anime fans, she sells, has been done many times. What do you think Yuasa and Eizouken can bring to the table to make this show stand out? So I have an immediate answer for this, which is I mentioned before, like, you know, who else could do this? Like, that's kind of the same thing. And I mentioned Ikehara, you know, Maro Penguin Drum, Saranzama, Utena guy, so on and so forth. The thing is, though, like, I think that Yuasa in particular, like, as I've said, he has a deep affection for his own medium. Now, I'm not saying, of course, the Ikehara or other animators or creators don't. That's obviously not the case at all. But I think that that's a unique, like, you know, that's like a foundational element of who he is as a creator, inherently. And indeed, like, you know, the nods that he's put in this episode to Ghibli, for example, amongst other things, and just the creative process thereof, I think speak volumes to his affection for the medium in general. So I think that in that sense, judging from him as a person like who is very much like, hey, I love this stuff so much and I want you to feel that enthusiasm, like, I think that's translated directly into how the characters interact, which is something I'll talk about in a bit. I think that other creators could do this, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they could do it to quite the same level of just raw enthusiasm and passion that Yuasa has.
So, like, I haven't seen some of the big... Like, I haven't seen Animation Runner Kuromi, which is one of the first ones I can remember that did an anime about making anime. But of course, you know, Shirobako is a huge tentpole thing last decade for fandom. And I think that serves as like a really instructive contrast with this show, because that show, of course, is like a peek behind the curtain, a loving peek behind the curtain at the anime industry itself and kind of what goes on there and everything that it takes real people in the real world doing to make an episode of anime come together. And I think this show... It would serve as a nice, I don't know if counterpoint was the right word or like an antecedent to it, but like you see in that show, again, they're very loving about it, but it's not ideal working in the anime industry. What would make someone want to do that? Well, this show is like, it shows you like how these young people like will have these epiphanies. And then they just become creators. Like, they now have the impetus to go forward and create things, and creating becomes more important than living a sustainable lifestyle or, you know, eating. Much like, I don't know, like Van Gogh or whatever doing paintings, poor as shit, you know, back in the day. Like, a lot of these animators are artists of high caliber, I would argue. And they are willing to... those that stay in the industry and don't, you know, go and become video game artists where it's more lucrative, I think. But those that stay in the animation industry do it because there's just this deep wellspring of like love that they have for animation in particular and what it can express, the worlds that it can create, how it can depict and distort reality, all these different things. And I think this show showing that love is something, and at least showing it in this way, like showing, and again, other shows might kind of be like, our people love anime so much, like look at what they sacrifice, but this is sort of showing, this is like a metaphorical kind of look at what's going on inside their imaginations and like what makes them, what drives them to make. And for that, I think it's amazing.
I agree. All right, so thank you to Yukinon and Roma for offering up your questions. As I say, if you want to check out our Patreon, you can subscribe to that, get yourself Discord access, and a whole load of other benefits, like a little fruits basket kind of thing going on here. The thing, not the show. Sorry to say. And, feel free to ask us questions about that, episode 2 when it comes along, or indeed, we'll also be covering Jewel and Richard, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Look out for that, patrons. But anyway, we'll come back to those times. So, talking points. Let's get into the big chunky meat of this whole thing. Do you want to go first, Doc, or shall I?
I'll go first. Why not?
I have talked a while, to be fair. So,
that's okay.
Indeed.
I've chimed in plenty, so I don't feel like I've been unfairly talked over or anything like that. So where to begin? What talking point should I choose?
I was going to say there's a lot.
There's so...
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick the tiger.
I don't necessarily want to get to the giant thing yet. Mm-hmm. The greatest world. I'll put that to one side and say, here's an interesting thing that I read, an interview with the episode director / storyboarder, Mori Motohashi. I forget where the interview is, but you can look on Anime News Network or Sakugaburo. They both link the interview and or talk about it. But Motohashi said that they wanted to do, and this again was like endorsed by the mangaka and Yuasa and stuff, gender-neutral movement, which is an incredibly fascinating idea in my opinion. So 3 young ladies, right, in this show. There are characters, but it could have been 3 young boys based on, the movement. There's nothing particularly feminine in the, like, over-the-top, like, secondary sexual characteristics kind of way about the way that the characters move. According to the people behind the anime, that was their intention behind it. And to me, this is like a really, really interesting idea. And I'll tell you one reason why. And that's because, talking about my early anime fandom made me think. We, for a long time, we being like fans I've interacted with online, my anime friends, have always kind of derided the self-insert character.
Oh boy, have I.
In anime, you as well. Like, I don't know.
I've taken them out. I've taken the concepts out behind the shed and blown its brains out of a shotgun, at least on multiple occasions.
Like, whether it be the author wanting to put themselves in something or creating a milquetoast character for
Guilty Crown.
nerdy.
Oh, sorry.
Nerdy, antisocial young men to like insert themselves into as a sort of like this. Everything could happen to you. You who is not really doing anything. You who's not really doing anything with your life. Everything could happen to you. But like this is the sort of show, I think, that even though these characters are actually, in my opinion, well defined, and I love them all dearly, protect them, keep your hands off them, if you will. There's still something self-inserty about them, at least conceptually in the mind of the creators, and that's such a good thing.
Oh, yes.
Because I think this is the kind of episode where you want people to get caught up in it, to feel like, I identify, like, this is sort of me, and I could be... The ideas I've had and the creations I've had and the things I've thought about, like, I could really go with them. I could really make something. I could do something. And I think, like, the difference of self-insert here is, like, it's just like the anti-isekai, you know what I mean? Where, like, in isekai, you have the dumb self-insert where, like, they're doing nothing and everything happens to them. And this is, like, insert yourself because if you want to, you can make everything happen for yourself. Like, you can get out there and create the greatest world if you so choose. Like, meet up with people. Like, your enthusiasm, like that, Asakusa meets up with...
They made friends.
Yeah. The whole reason Tsubami meets her is because she's spewing, just gushing gleefully about Future Boy Conan to Kanamori. That's the reason that she meets her. And it's like, yes, like this is, gosh, what you want. And Zofang says that he believes, or sorry, they believe there's a lot of Yuasa in Asakusa. And I could totally see that too. So yeah, I think... that the gender-neutral movement and the self-insert is a really interesting aspect of this.
I would agree. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people would love the show even if they've never ever done any sort of like creative like hobby in their lives. I know for a fact, for example, from like people that are in our Discord and elsewhere, if you've ever done fan art, even if you're just a casual art drawer, like if you've done it when you were younger, never done it again, like you will fucking love this show. I love this show for many reasons, not least of which is because I think it's so perfectly articulate that sense of pure like joy and like how to put it, excitement that you feel when you're like in the middle of that creative process, when you're brimming with ideas, when they're flowing from you freely. I mean, I used to write and I kind of got burnt out on it, but the way I felt when I was watching the scene of them like building the dragonfly was how I felt when I was writing like at the peak of the time I was doing it. It makes me want to do it again.
Yay!
It's so
that's great.
Good at that. It's just the best, honestly. And I agree with you there, like to compare, like, you know, the reason why I hate self-insert protagonists so much times is because when they're targeted at like people like me, and when I say people like me, I don't of course mean bald British gaijin. I mean
niche.
I mean cishet, like, you know, otaku-ish kind of people, you know, who watch a lot of anime. What they often challenge us to do through the self-insert is to be worse. They don't challenge us to be better. They challenge us to engage in a lot of like awful behavior. This is why I hate Shield Hero, for example, because they didn't challenge him to be better, they challenged him to be a complete and he was. Apologies for the profuse language there, but I felt like it was appropriate. So anyway. So yeah, I really, really appreciate that because it's challenging you to be better. It's challenging you to enjoy, like, you know, the bliss of the creative process and just shared group enthusiasm.
So good. So incredible and needed. And like you said, like, it's not kind of playing to your bad impulses and bad habits as a nerd or an anime person. You know, like, it is encouraging you to put yourself out there, encouraging you to go on these creative adventures, and saying like your reality doesn't have to be like confined to the empirical space around you. Like, you and other people can make it bigger.
I should note, by the way, what I think is also really key is that while in theory, I mean, I don't know the rest of the plot of this particular manga. I know nothing about beyond what I've seen of this episode, although I can have some speculation as to what might happen next. I think it's actually very important that this episode does not end with them committing to making an anime at all, or rather the idea is floated, but it's not, because I think it actually would devalue it a bit if they just simply, you know, ended this episode with them making an anime or getting started on it, as opposed to simply enjoying the creative process for its own sake, because they end up having fun as a result of it. So I think that is very key there, that's how that ended, rather than simply going straight into like making a product, so to speak.
Although,
oh man, dear,
I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, especially Kanamori's, because like I love Kanamori deeply.
I'm going to be talking about her next, believe me. There's a lot I have to say about her.
Yeah, she is that figure that it's possible they could lean to, and she's really fun now and really hilarious, and like actually offers something that I think balances out the other two quite nicely and creates a really good group dynamic for the show. But it is noticeable that you have her already wanting to monetize all this exuberance, you know what I mean? Like thinking about markets and shit. I mean, I guess you can't really blame her in some ways because this is the fucking
she
world
seems
we
like
live
a
in.
pragmatist, I would
Yeah.
say, which I think can be an asset, but also a detriment to the group as well as we go along. In that she'll probably serve as like a balancing factor, so to speak, to rein in, like, you know, the expectations that they might have to get a bit too wild. But similarly, also like that in of itself can be a problem. I'm sure we'll see.
I wonder if, like, you know, I've talked about sort of like Ghibli at like the core three, the three pillars a lot, you know, in our Ghibli podcast. Miyazaki, Takahata, and Toshio Suzuki. Suzuki, not really an animator, just the sort of producer, I think. I wonder if like Kanamori is sort of a Toshio Suzuki type figure. If that is his relationship to the other two, who are like super creative, and even though Takahata himself doesn't draw, he still has incredibly sort of like detailed vision and totally hands-on and everything. And Suzuki is just like, well, let's make some money, people. I wonder if that's how it goes. But anyway, what's your talking point, buddy? What's your first
Let's talk about Kanamori, and let's talk about group enthusiasm and selling your world to an audience.
Okay.
So I'm going to need to actually go on for the mild mini review tangent of Somali and the Forest Spirit here. And I'm only going to keep this as brief as possible because it's not what we're going to talk about. But one thing I noted in that particular show, which if you've not seen it, is you have Somali, small kid, being looked after by Golem in a weird, like, blue neon, like, forest alien world kind of thing. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. But what's key in that, I think, is that Somali is enthusiastic about everything that she sees. Now, when we as an audience are introduced to a fictional world, we want to be excited about it. We want to care about what's going on in it and be enthralled and enraptured by it. And that in of itself can be accomplished without necessarily involving any of the characters in said world. But I do think it's key that, as it is in Somali's case, that there can be a character who can look at the world in front of them and be as infused by it as we are. It offers it that kind of like legitimacy, that it's not just something created for our benefit, but is truly wondrous to regular people inside the fiction in of itself. Why is that relevant to Eizouken? Because that is what Kanamori does. It's no small thing that she ends up involved in the entire, like, you know, Imagine Dragonfly escape at the end.
Did you just say Imagine Dragons on this podcast? Imagine Dragonfly.
It's no small thing that she's there, because for all that she herself, at least thus far, has not presented herself as an anime fan, that is secondary to her being involved in her two friends, you know, and the creative process they're getting. She's willing to be involved, and that's the point where she identifies in that world and isn't distinct from it or absent from it. I mean, in a different version of this story, I could imagine, for example, it just being Asakusa and Miyazaki who are doing this. And, you know, you get Kanamori, like, this insert shot, like, the cuts back to real, and she's just there, like, you know. But no, this is very informative about her character without it being told. We are shown it just simply by her existence in that world, that she's enraptured by it in the same way, even though she's not inherently an anime fan as far as we are shown. For all that she comes across as brusque and very, like, you know, fiscally oriented.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much behavior that she engages in that informs her that she's actually very three-dimensional and deeply cares about these two.
Totally.
And I think that just simply having her there alone is a wondrous little inclusion. But then also, think of it this way. It's also important, I think, for getting across how good, you know, Asakusa and Miyazaki are articulating it. Remember what I said about Somali and how her presence, like, and her enthusiasm about the world legitimizes it? Mm-hmm. In turn, Kanamori being brought in, that is a function partly of her character and her personality, don't get me wrong. Mm. But in turn, that would not have happened if it wasn't, like, you know, brought across in such a passionate way by Asakusa and Miyazaki to begin with. They have to present it, and she has to then receive it.
Yeah.
And so, because of this combination of factors, beyond us simply enjoying the visuals and, you know, all of the, you know, the high-paced action and all that, and everything that's going on, and appreciating it as anime fans, the show works to also give its world legitimacy by having the characters both be enthusiastic about the creation process thereof, and secondly, having an audience member in Kanamori who is willing to be drawn into it in almost kind of the same way as Asakusa is at the very beginning of the show when she goes into the screen.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to draw out from this, and it's just simply by having her be there, and it's great.
It really is. That's such a great point, and gosh, it just makes me think of that I hope folks that talk about anime, either for a living or for a hobby, don't feel like they can't be enthusiastic, because, you know, certainly, like, want your credibility as a critic and everything. That's understandable. You know, you want to not give away praise for free, but I think at the same time, if you undersell how much you love a thing and how excited you are about it, like, that's a disservice also. Like, I love enthusiasm about hobbies, not even just anime, but, like, about almost anything. Like, if you are engaging and enthusiastic, and almost anyone who's, like, really loves a thing the way that these people love something, it is going to be engaging to me. I'm going to be drawn to it. I find that incredible. I've discovered so many anime that I would have never watched in a million years because, like, hearing people on Anime is Lit, Anime News Network, whatever, just
look at me right here and what I have done and what I've encountered since doing this podcast. Speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Exactly.
All right. I'm going to pass the baton back to you, Chief. What you got next?
I guess now is as good a time as any for me to go for... I ended up combining, I think, a lot of my notes into different points that we talked about. So I think that I might be ready to go into what, for me on the rewatch, was like a kind of a pow, like hit across the head.
Bang!
Yeah. The Greatest World.
Oh boy, The Greatest World.
I think you are going to, and certainly Emily Rand For Me in Full Bloom has a wonderful articulation, and again, I think you will too, of what The Greatest World kind of is in a straightforward way in this episode.
I can sum it up in 3 words. The human imagination.
Yes.
Boom!
Boom. Pow!
Touchdown!
From way downtown, bang. There's a old 90s sports reference. That is, and that's accurate. Like, I think that is a huge part of what the show is trying to do. And trying to grab you by the collar and be like, this is that stuff. This is what we wanted to show you and tell you.
But it is deeper than that, I will admit as well. Like, it's very simple for me to say that. But I think that, what the Asakusa is speaking of there is that moment, that peak moment of creative enjoyment. And feel like, why do you, where you look out on something that you've made and you feel a sense of like accomplishment, but also wonder of the thing that you've made. Like, that's where she is at that point, looking over the meteor shower.
Totally. That's, I don't want to say one side of the coin, because that would indicate that what I'm about to say is of equal importance and equal weighting. And I don't necessarily think it is, but here is, I think, a different aspect, or at least a different way of looking at
Hit me.
What The Greatest World means and what life is like for an artist or a creator, right? There's a scene kind of in the first act of the episode, first act when they're in high school. And Akatsuka is telling Kanamori about the layout of the school. Mm-hmm. And she's like, here's a bridge going over water, and like, here's where the clock tower is, and here is this like crossing and there's different levels that things are on. And you kind of, and first of all, like, the anime looks like the backgrounds and the characters moving through them, it looks so densely packed. I love how dense it is. It's great for expressing what I'm about to talk about. Like, our actual world is this incredibly dense place teeming with like...
I was going to bring this up, but you've hit the nail on the head here.
It's teeming with not just life, but all these like details. There's all these different conduits to imagination. And so while it's absolutely true that the greatest world is, and this episode is saying this, it is that world of imagination, that kind of unbounded, unconstrained inspiration that we see manifested so amazingly with like the planet and the meteor shower. But for an artist, it's almost like our world that we're living in as well. They get to be fully engaged with it and have these kind of like different switched on experience because they're seeing it in different ways. They're seeing details and life and like all these aspects of it, picking up on them and pulling them in to their greatest world, like their imagination. And it's this like wheel of inspiration. And so it's like the artist, the true kind of creative in tune with the world around them, they get to live in, if not the greatest world, the greatest version of the world that there is to live in. This world where there's potential and possibility everywhere to pull into the world of imagination.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, like, obviously Asakusa is inspired by Future Boy Conan, but in turn, where does Future Boy Conan come from? Like, trace this back. Obviously, we've lived a long history as a species of, like, fiction being created and all the things that we've been inspired by in turn have cycled along and such and spun into new things. but we're always drawing from our real life as well in terms of just what we see. But if it's just visual things, why is Asakusa taking such a great interest in the city after all and the school environment, which, as she said, has grown kind of like unplanned, unchecked, but in a kind of beautiful way in its own right, because it's developed kind of almost like an organic thing, like an organism, like fitting the space in, to the point where there are idiosyncrasies like the fact that, oh, here's this clock, you can't see it from most of the school, so we have to use the one across the bay. Something clearly not planned for, but it's a quirky little feature of it that makes the place stand out. I mean, when I next go to Manchester, for example, I can think of, for example, different areas of the city that I probably wouldn't pay much attention to in terms of how they look, but you can see discrete like sections of it. Like you've got the Northern Quarter, which is very bohemian. There's lots of graffiti everywhere, but like when I say graffiti, I don't mean like, people drawing dicks on it. I'm talking like actual art. Versus like the more cosmopolitan areas of, say, Spinningfields and such like that. And you go on Princess Street, more student areas. Like, it's just a crazy amalgamation of things, like a patchwork, if you will. And the fact that I'm even describing these terms makes you think like, hey, I'm engaging in my own creative synthesis of like trying to blend in together this language to adequately explain how this city came to be the way it is now. And that's just by taking a different angle and perspective on it. I mean, I was going to bring this up separately, but now this is a perfect time to do it. The thing that I was reminded of when watching this show, there is a film from 2002 called Adaptation, starring Nicolas Cage in one of his less crazy roles. And what was his name?
Brian Cox.
Brian Cox. Yeah. Brian Cox. Not Brian Cox of Queen fame, though, I should know. There is an infamous, or rather famous, speech from Brian Cox's character in that particular film. And Nicolas Cage's character asked him, like, what if I wanted to write a film about a boring, normal situation, where it's very true to real life? And Brian Cox's character, not to put it mildly, flips his shit over this, because he says, like, people go to church, people fall in love, people, divorce, people, like, die, there's all sorts of things, like, man walks, like, I can't replicate the speech exactly because I don't have it to hand, but it's a great speech because it points out that even in real life, there's so much drama and so many events going on that you need to just take a different look at it to realize that there's always something that's, like, worth your interest and worth your time. What is otherwise on the surface mundane instead becomes extraordinary if you just take a different lens to it. I mean, Asakusa, after all, is observing things through binoculars at the start of the episode.
Damn! Splash!
I wish I actually had a hand mic for that because I just dropped it there. But wow, it's true. It's true. So yeah, no, I see where you're coming from with the greatest. I mean, maybe I was looking at it too simplistically, but you're right in that I think the greatest world is, as you say, like one where you have that perspective on things that otherwise exist in real life that can then be extrapolated from to create something truly wondrous, or even recognize what's wondrous right in front of you, but you may never realize it.
Or just like make it wondrous to other people by like trying to express an aspect of how you see it. There might not be anything wondrous about the graffiti corner, but if you like abstract it out of, the real world, then you like try to like present it how you kind of see it in your mind's eye, that could be really special and get people to appreciate a little bit more of the real world, but also, just your experience and your feelings. And I just like that this shows that there is this relationship between the artist and the real world, the empirical, their life, and how, like, while, like, absolutely, like, I think just the imagination and what's possible there and the worlds you kind of create within it and present to other people in partiality are the greatest worlds. I mean, I think that's true. I think the show is right about that.
Indeed. And to give you an example of that, there's probably been many, many different variations of this, but have you ever seen a picture of, like, say, taken from a skyscraper, of a road network in a heavily congested city, where it's blurred lights because they've been sped up over time, like, captured at high frame rate, averaged over. I don't exactly know the process behind it, so I apologize if I'm simplifying it. But the car journeys every single one of those people make are probably the most mundane, boring commuter shit you can imagine. But then when you get it to that point where you see it like as lines of light, it almost like depicts it like as a living organism. You think of it that way. Bloodstreams, if you will.
It's crazy, isn't it? How
it's a small change.
Yeah.
But what was mundane becomes extraordinary.
Change in perspective can give meaning to so many things that seem, either from our perspective on the ground or another perspective, meaningless or without value. And that's an incredible thing. Like that's what I love about art. And I think why The Greatest World is so like important, that it's not just the greatest world living for its own sake. You know what I mean? It's not just like, it's not simply there to play in for the artist. Like, okay, let me rephrase that, because I think play is important. And I think an artist being fed, kind of their soul being fed by their imagination and the concepts that they and their friends create is so important and something that a lot of people should be doing. But I think like the potential of how that world can affect every one of us in our like actual lives on this plane of existence is also tremendously important. And the fact that it's like we were talking about with Ghost in the Shell the other day on After Hours, like about how like novels affect us. Novels are works of fiction that don't really exist, but like they sort of generate like change in the physical world.
Even if you just learn the language and you then start like this presenting, that's how I've learned a lot of my vocabulary over the years from observing it from novels. And then you speak differently as a result. Yeah, certainly a part of it. Right, I have one final talking point. I want to talk about what I think is also going to be the existential threat in this show.
Ooh, there's a threat.
There is.
Okay.
There is, and I'll explain why. So, you remember I told you before about putting a pin in about the events of the theatre?
Yeah.
This actually ties into what you and I just discussed, because think of it this way, right? It's almost kind of meta and even self-referential and even, like, you know, exposing itself a little. But they're in a theatre watching an anime, you know, while an anime plot plays out in front of them in real time. With the MIBs coming in.
It's the MIBs. Here come the MIBs.
Yes.
You know, and with Mizuzaki, like, you know, being forced to, like, have a role that she doesn't want because she's got, like, ultra-rich, like, megacorp parents, that kind of thing. That in itself would be an anime plot all in its own right.
Right.
So it's almost self-referential. It's like pointing to itself even, like, say, you know, I'm being self-aware here. But then, bear in mind those MIBs' presence. Do we see them again in this episode?
Only in the world of imagination. Only as ice.
Boom! Yes. But here's the thing, though, right? As much as we said before about the idea, like, you know, of what we draw from the real world, I don't think it's an unreasonable stretch to say that had the MIBs never appeared, they would not have then appeared in that world as a result either. Because they're drawing from the experience they just had earlier that day.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that to me seems like a representation of the threat that they're going to face, particularly in Mizusaki's case, in that she wants to engage in this process of creation with, you know, friends of animation. But the MIBs, the faceless, you know, soulless individuals, right, represented by her parents, we don't even know what they look like yet or what they're called. Even they can bleed through into this world, and they're a reminder that they will come back and try and stop her from doing this again. From taking flight, even. Outside factors will try and get in the way of these girls having their, you know, fun doing this thing.
Yeah, you know, Sakuga Daishi does say capitalism in chat as the existential thing. And it's kind of right, you know, because and maybe this will come from her parents and not Kanamori.
Well, Kanamori can be involved in that as well.
Maybe it will just be like, like this is not profitable, so it's not worth your time. It's sort of like the current capitalist economy's attack on like the humanities and liberal arts, you know, as valid pursuits in education.
Well, this is why I said before that I felt it was very valuable for the show that it didn't end on them deciding to make a show for a product, but rather that they just enjoyed the process of doing it for its own sake. In fact, to me, you know what I know this might sound like a strange comparison, but this to me evoked the idea of running a Dungeons and Dragons game a little bit. That kind of thing, you know, where you're enjoying it for the entertainment's sake, you're conjuring up this world and having this adventure in it. Now, obviously, not the same thing, but same kind of feeling, I think, and Dungeons and Dragons itself is inherent, like, as a game you play, is not something you do for profit. At least not as far as I'm aware. I'm sure that there are people out there who do
There are some podcasts out there that are actual play podcasts.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. But that's my point, though. Like, you know, for the moment, the exercise is the reward of itself. And so the threat, therefore, is going to be either, what does that turn into over the course of time? And in turn, what do external forces such as the MIBs, which represent, unwarranted influence, what will they, bring into the worlds that they create? Will they poison them? Will they break them? I mean, we've seen, like, in this episode that there are hard cuts away from the fantasy world to reality when something intervenes. It's very fragile, the things that they create.
You never quite know where the MIBs is at, Shadon.
Were you trying to lead me into singing some Will Smith then? You were really wanted me to do Will Smith then.
I did.
And I'm sorry to say, folks, but this is not the karaoke hour here at Warui Deshou. That might be a new patron tier thing, maybe. We'll discuss it off cast. How best can I embarrass myself to make more money?
I think we'll be revisiting the whole, product and markets and all that versus art, in future episodes, for sure. I'm
sure we will. And this is why I think Kanamori will certainly serve an interesting purpose. Like she's money-oriented, but we've seen sides that say that money isn't everything. Mm-hmm. So which side is going to tug more strongly?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Oh, man.
Whew, all right. Well, do you want to call it here?
I'm done.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm talked out on this. I suppose what we'll end with is just two quick thoughts, which is this episode was very heavy on the Ghibli references, at least as I see them. I mean, we obviously have the confirmed one of Future Boy Conan. Whether or not the Dragonfly one was Lapidus-based, whether or not the opening car... I'm just going on based on the fact we didn't have explicit confirmation. And whether or not, the opening car ride was a Spirited Away reference is also up for debate. But what I think would be really fascinating for this show to do, as it goes along, not every episode, but in some of them, where they have specific call-outs to legendary creators. May I say, for example, a Tamino-focused episode?
Oh my god. Just about robots and
the thing that will make your head explode as much as mine if it happens. What if they had an Ikuhara tribute episode?
Oh, that would be...
I think
so good.
I think my head would explode.
That would be so good.
That would be incredible. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to happen. Because obviously licensing. I mean, they obviously danced a bit on the the side, on the edge of things here with doing the straight up adaptation of Future Boy Conan, which they got approval for in the end, so it all works out. But maybe other people will not be so accommodating to that. So we'll see. We'll see if they do more of that. But I think if there's something else I want to just mention is that for all that you and I have really, really gone into the weeds on details like the Grace's world, the roles the characters play and such, the environment's influence and all that kind of thing, the MIBs, blah 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
I hope to you listening at home or wherever you may be listening to this that we've conveyed, above all else, just the sheer joy and fun and verve and energy that this show has.
Energy is the word.
And how it made us both feel. I was smiling from ear to ear when I was finished watching this. I knew that I'd found something special. And I admit that this is something that you will have a bit of a bias towards if you yourself have any interest in animation at all, period. Even if it's just academic, if you're a Sakuga person, for example. Or B, if you've been involved in any sort of creative hobby of your own. Say, for example, fan art, or if you've done writing like I have. All that kind of thing. You'll probably enjoy this show more than you would if you weren't either of those things. But I still think the show is incredible on its own merits, even without that. It's like I say, that's why we had Kanamori serve as kind of an audience proxy in getting us on board. If she can be that enthusiastic about it, I don't see why anyone else can't be. And certainly, given the collective reaction the anime community has had, I don't think I've seen a single bad thing said about this show.
Yeah.
And woe betide poor people who now have to, the poor anime creators who are going to have to follow this.
God.
But that being said as well, the gauntlet's also been laid down for this show in of itself.
Yep,
it now has to keep this standard. That's a high task. And Masaki Yuasa is a damn fine, creative. We'll see how it plans out, but I am so excited to cover the rest of this week on week. I am genuinely pumped to give this a week on week look.
And this show will have a lot of crossover appeal for different audiences. So it's airing on NHK in Japan, which is sort of like PBS, public television over there. So it's going to reach a lot of not otaku anime fan people. And over here, I've already seen on Twitter people that are kind of just sort of general nerd culture people. They're aware of anime, but they're not let me watch everything on Crunchyroll, Funimation, and Amazon Prime. Just like, but they're talking about this show, and it has like, I think a look that's very appealing and very like not anime. Like, there's not like fan service that not like that I have a problem with it, but it's like it's a tripwire for some people. You know, it's a deal breaker. So I think that there's a lot of potential for this to have a pretty big audience, so it's very exciting.
And it certainly, to me, feels like it has its own identity in the same way that reminds me of last year's, winter 2019 big premiere, which was Mob Psycho Season 2.
Oh, yes.
Because you remember, like, that to me feels like it's very much its own thing. Like, there's nothing quite like that, and in the same way, that's what I could also say about Eizouken.
Totally.
This is going to be one to watch in many respects, and I feel very confident already this is going to be one of the best shows I will watch all year, if not the best. I mean, it made me want to write again. Enough said. Mic drop. I'm out.
So
what more do you want me to say? No show, I think, for the rest of this year is going to make me want to do that. Whether I actually do is a different matter, of course, but the fact that it made me feel that, will to do that again after I felt I'd been burnt out for so long, that's special to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I suppose we should wrap up by rating the episode.
Yeah, we're gonna, as if you're a new listener, we conclude these by rating the episode on a 1 to 5 scale, and then we also, throughout the show, if you've been in chat, we haven't referenced them audibly, but we do Twitter polls, and they're going to be up for a whole week. So even if you're listening on demand, and it's been a week since the 9th of January, you too can vote in these, and we will read the results at the beginning of next week's stream. But I guess let's go ahead and rate the episode. Give it to me. Give me your rating.
Well, oh god, what could I possibly rate this episode at? Oh, this is difficult. No, I'm kidding, of course. I'm going to give this unreservedly 5 out of 5 missed loads of laundry.
Boom.
I mean, it just
kind of see like, everything we said.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. What more do you want me to say, everyone? Honestly, as I say though, all I really hope in the end is that I can at least even partially articulate just how good the show is. And if you haven't watched it yet, I don't know what you're doing. If I may be so honest,
please go watch it.
Go watch it.
Watch it again.
It's such a treat.
Totally. I'm gonna go 5 out of 5 MIBs.
It's the MIBs. Here come the MIBs.
It's the MIBs. It's the MIBs. See? You got it out of me in the end.
So, like, yeah, just based on everything. I mean, it's incredible. It's joyful. It's philosophic and fun and unique and beautiful. It's everything. It's anime. It's just a fantastic half hour of anime and animation and storytelling.
Delightful.
Check it out. So our polls, let me update them really quick to get the latest numbers. Again, at Warui Deshou, WARUIDESHOU on Twitter. Here are the polls thus far. Poll number 1. Is Masaki Yuasa the best possible fit for this adaptation? The answers are yes and yes! So far, the more tepid yes is winning 60 to 40%. Would you defy orders and join the anime club?
Yes.
In early days, we have hi winning.
Is that a stealth ad for our Patreon then?
I think so. Let's just say that it is. 76 point. When did Twitter start doing the decimals? 76.2%. Whereas no M Coward is at 23.8%.
We must have had quite a lot of votes on that one for it to get to decimalization.
I know, yeah. It's a decent number of votes compared to some of the ones that we have been doing, but it's Eizouken and it's a premiere week, so. And our third and final poll, Kanamori's Backpack, bad, good, or best? Best at the moment has 63%, and good has 36%. Bad has no votes so far, and let us hope it shall remain such.
And thus order was maintained.
Yes. So again, at Warui Deshou on Twitter to vote on those. Shadon, before we go, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out our own Patreon and our lovely patrons. For many of them are in chat, so hello.
Indeed. Holler out to all of you, our wonderful patrons, for helping support us, helping make this possible. Your contributions are utterly invaluable and deeply humbling to me, even after all this time that we've been doing this now. Thank you so much. If you yourself listening at home would like to become a patron, go to patreon.com/Warui Deshou. You've got $2, $3, or $5 tiers, which offer you an increasing number of benefits. Get yourself Discord access, get yourself ad-free access to our podcasts. Get yourself access to our second stream where we'll be covering Jewel of Richard week on week. If you subscribe to the highest tier, you can even request that we cover shows. I'm currently in the process of working on an essay for Flag.
Yes.
The 2006 first-person journalism simulator.
The only found footage anime to exist.
Yeah.
And I am...
The closest we ever got to an anime adaptation of Fatal Frame.
The Flag Witch Project. So, and I finalized the essay, but I'm in the recording process for, it's taken me much longer than it does you to do these things, but, for an essay about the first episode of Kino's Journey and the end of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and kind of individual existence, collective consciousness, what these shows are trying to say about them. That'll be up soon you can, request things on our $5 tier, but you get to hear them on the $3 tier and up. So, 3 budget-friendly tiers for all sorts of lifestyles. And support us if you can. If not, we're on Anchor. We're on .fm/Warui Deshou. We're on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. We're on SoundCloud. We're on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a listen. All that sort of things. Those will all help us and are things that you can do for free. And we'd appreciate that.
Right. I suppose that leaves that then. So we'll be back next week to cover Eizouken episode 2. For those of you who are wondering where our final Vinland stream is, that will also be next week.
Yes.
We'll be rounding out the final 2 episodes. We'll also be bringing you Jewel of Richard imminently as well, if you're one of our patrons who are subscribed at the appropriate tier. But otherwise, to all of you who've been listening to us talk about this show today, or even if you're joining us later because you're listening to after the fact, thank you very much for spending your time with us. It is immensely appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion of Eizouken, and I hope you've got something out of it. I certainly can't wait to cover more of this show in as much detail as I've done so today, if not more so. But from myself and Doc, as always, I hope you all have a lovely evening, and as we're, occasionally want to do on this podcast every now and again when mood strikes us, I'll just say this, which is to quote a bit of Macross and say, embrace everyone to the ends of the universe. Adios.
Keep your hands off Eizouken and Kanamori.
Keep it easy breezy.
Thanks again to our friend Mako Soundworks for allowing us to use his song GPS in the intro, and our friend Michael Kelly, Go Road Music, for allowing us to use Every Day is Night from Valhalla as the outro music. Big thanks to our partners over at the Anime Herald. You can support them at patreon.com/Anime Herald. And a very special thank you to our listeners, each and every one, especially our patrons. If you'd like to become a patron, go to patreon.com/Warui Deshou.